The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes a man notice every small sound, every shift in the air, every whisper of wind passing through trees. The river beside him stretched wide and dark, its surface calm and silver under the pale moonlight, as if the whole world was holding its breath. He walked slowly on the muddy path, boots sinking softly, his eyes drawn again and again to the black water moving beside him. Something about the night felt strange, heavier than usual, as if the darkness itself was waiting for something to happen. The man stopped for a moment, pulling his jacket tighter around himself, and then he noticed it. Out in the middle of the river, far away from where any stone or fish might stir, the water rippled on its own. The ripples spread wide, circles glowing faintly, a pale blue light rising up from below the surface. His heart skipped. Rivers did not glow, not like that, not in silence without storm or fire or machine. He stared harder, leaning forward, unsure if his tired eyes were playing tricks on him, but the glow only grew brighter. It pulsed, like the beat of a heart deep in the water, faint but steady, and each pulse sent more ripples moving across the river's still skin. He whispered to himself without thinking, a broken sound that carried fear and wonder both, and then the air shifted again. This time he heard something. It was weak at first, so soft he thought it might be the sound of a bird far away or a branch creaking under the weight of the night. But then it came again, clearer, closer, rising faintly above the quiet splash of water against the bank. A cry. Not the cry of a bird or dog or child. Something different, something sharp and thin, a voice filled with pain. His blood ran cold as he stepped closer to the edge of the river, boots sinking deeper into the wet ground. He listened hard, every nerve alive, every instinct telling him to go back, to walk away, but his legs carried him forward anyway. The cry came again, longer this time, shivering through the air like it was coming from the very water itself. He peered into the river and saw the glow shift, sliding toward the shore as if something under the surface was moving, struggling, fighting to rise. He leaned down, eyes wide, hands braced against his knees, and for one long second he saw nothing but dark water broken by trembling light. Then, with a sudden surge, something broke the surface. A shape, small and weak, half hidden by the glowing water. The man stumbled back, almost falling, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might split his chest. The thing in the river gave another cry, softer this time, almost like it was calling for help. Against every thought in his mind, the man reached forward. The shape writhed weakly, catching on the current, and he saw now that it had limbs, thin and fragile, and skin that shimmered faintly like glass under moonlight. Water dripped off it in streams that glowed faintly blue, as if the river itself clung to it. Without thinking more, he knelt and thrust his arms into the cold water, hands closing around the slippery form. It was lighter than he expected, warm to the touch, and yet the moment he held it, a strange pulse ran up his arms. It was not heat, not electricity, but something between both. His body stiffened as the pulse surged through his hands, climbing to his chest, making his breath catch. He almost dropped the creature back into the water, but his grip held, tight with a strange mixture of fear and compassion. He dragged it onto the muddy bank and laid it down under the moonlight. His breath came fast and rough, his eyes locked on the small figure. It looked fragile, like a child, but its head was too large, its limbs too thin, its skin too smooth. Glowing veins traced under the surface, pulsing faintly with that same rhythm he had seen in the river. Its eyes were closed but moved beneath the lids as though caught in some nightmare. For a long moment, the man knelt there, unable to move, his mind screaming questions he could not answer. Was it an animal? A trick of the night? A creature from somewhere beyond his world? The pulse still lingered in his chest, leaving his hands trembling. He wanted to run. He wanted to throw it back into the river and forget what he had seen. But the weak sound came again, a soft cry, and he realized it was not the sound of a monster but the desperate call of something alive, something in pain, something that needed him. He looked out across the wide black river, and for the first time, he noticed how silent everything had become. The insects no longer sang. The wind had stopped. Even the trees seemed to lean in, waiting. He felt a weight pressing down on him, not just fear but the sense that by pulling this creature out, by answering its cry, he had changed something larger than himself. He did not know what it was hiding, or why its touch made his hand shake, but deep down he understood one thing with cold certainty. This night was not the same as all the others, and from this moment on, nothing in his life ever would be again. The small creature lay on the wet ground, its chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm, each breath glowing faintly beneath its strange skin. The man crouched beside it, heart still racing, unsure whether to move closer or step back into the safety of the night. He had never seen anything like it. Its body looked too fragile to belong to something dangerous, yet every small twitch of its limbs sent another faint pulse crawling up his arms, as though it carried some hidden energy that his body was not built to touch. He waited, listening for the sound of footsteps, voices, anything that could explain this, but the world around him was silent except for the quiet sound of the river rolling past. Slowly, carefully, he reached out again, placing his hand against the creature's shoulder. Its skin was slick and soft, like warm glass, and it trembled weakly under his touch. For the briefest moment, he thought he saw its eyelids flicker, a flash of glowing eyes beneath them, but then it went still again. He knew he couldn't leave it here. Whatever it was, it wouldn't survive on the cold, muddy ground. With a deep breath, he slipped his arms beneath its body and lifted it. The weight was lighter than he expected, almost too light, as if it were made of nothing but skin and fragile bones. Cradling it against his chest, he stood and started up the narrow trail toward his cabin hidden among the trees. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of the creature but because of the thoughts racing through his head. What had he just pulled out of that river? Where had it come from? Why was it glowing, and what had caused those cries that still echoed in his ears? The forest seemed to close in around him as he walked, every shadow leaning closer, every tree stretching taller, as if the night itself was aware of the strange thing he carried. Finally, the wooden cabin came into sight, dark and silent against the edge of the trees. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The air inside was warm and heavy with the scent of smoke and wood, the small fire in the stone hearth still burning from earlier in the evening. He laid the creature gently down on a blanket spread across the floor near the fire, its skin shimmering faintly in the glow. For a moment, he simply stared at it, his breath shallow, trying to convince himself this was real. He had always heard strange stories whispered in bars, tales about lights in the sky and shadows moving in the woods, but he had never believed any of them. Now here he was, staring at something that was alive, something that should not exist on Earth, something that was breathing right in front of him. He fetched a towel and carefully began wiping away the river water from its body. The fabric darkened as it absorbed the glowing liquid, and a shiver ran down his spine as the light dimmed slowly before fading out completely. The creature stirred at the touch, making a faint noise, not quite a word but not quite a sound of pain either. Its eyelids twitched, and then finally they opened. The man froze. Its eyes were large, far larger than any human's, round and luminous like pools of liquid silver. They blinked slowly, struggling to focus, and for a long moment, they locked on his face. He felt as if he was staring into a depth too wide to measure, like the night sky had been pressed into those eyes, endless and ancient. His throat went dry. He tried to speak, but no words came. Then the creature raised one trembling hand, its long thin fingers reaching toward him. It did not touch him but stopped just short of his chest, hovering in the air as if it could feel his heartbeat from a distance. In his mind, something flickered, an image, quick and sharp, flashing before his eyes even though he had not closed them. A burning sky. A ship falling in flames. Screams of voices that were not human. The vision disappeared just as quickly as it had come, leaving him gasping. He staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair, his heart hammering. The creature let its hand fall, its chest rising and falling faster now, its breath shallow. He whispered without thinking, "What are you?" The creature gave a faint sound, a broken noise, half word, half whisper, but its mouth did not form the language he knew. Still, there was meaning there, a tone that was not random. It was trying to speak to him. He shook his head, overwhelmed. He wanted to demand answers, to understand, but the sight of the creature struggling only filled him with something else, pity. Whatever this thing was, it was weak, wounded, scared. Slowly, he knelt beside it again, his hand hovering uncertainly over its shoulder. Its glowing veins pulsed once more, but softer now, less violent than before, almost as if it trusted him. Outside, the sound of distant helicopters broke the silence. The man stiffened, looking toward the window. The creature's body tensed at the sound, its eyes snapping wide open, glowing brighter than before. It let out a sharp, frightened sound, its small body twisting as though trying to hide. He looked back at it, then toward the sky, his gut tightening. Whoever was flying out there, the creature knew them, or feared them. And if they were looking for something tonight, Maybe they were already too close. The man swallowed hard, sweat running cold down his neck, as the strange glowing symbol appeared faintly across the creature's chest, rising like fire under its skin. He stared at it in disbelief, the pattern nothing like anything human, and he understood one terrifying truth: this thing had not come here by accident. It was hiding something. And now, because he had saved it, that secret was no longer buried in the river where it belonged. The fire burned low in the hearth, casting long shadows that stretched across the cabin walls. The man sat stiffly in the wooden chair, eyes fixed on the glowing creature lying on the blanket. Its breath had steadied, but the strange symbol on its chest still pulsed faintly, like a living brand beneath its translucent skin. He could not take his eyes off it. Every time the symbol glowed, he felt something stir inside his head, like a whisper brushing the edge of thought, too faint to understand but impossible to ignore. He rubbed his temples, muttering to himself, trying to fight off the feeling that his own mind was no longer entirely his own. The creature shifted suddenly, its long fingers curling against the fabric. Its eyes opened, silver light spilling out, and in that instant the man felt the whisper again. This time it was stronger, flooding his vision with images. He gripped the arms of the chair as the cabin disappeared around him. He was no longer in his home. He was standing under a blackened sky lit by fire. Towering ships loomed above, their hulls broken and burning as they crashed into mountains and seas. Voices screamed all around him, countless voices, none of them human. He saw soldiers running, strange armored figures, and then something larger, beasts of metal and light tearing through them. The smell of smoke and ash filled his lungs. His heart pounded. Then the vision shifted, pulling him downward into darkness, until he saw water churning, wide and endless, and something massive sinking beneath the waves. He could feel the creature's fear, its desperation, its will to protect whatever was hidden below. And then it was gone. The cabin walls returned, the fire snapping, the sound of the river faint beyond the windows. He staggered forward, one hand braced against the floor, sweat pouring down his face. The creature was staring at him with those enormous silver eyes, and though its mouth made no words, he understood. It was showing him pieces of its memory. He fell back onto his knees, gasping, his chest rising and falling. "There's something in the river," he whispered aloud, almost in disbelief. His words seemed to startle the creature. Its eyes narrowed slightly, its chest rising faster as if confirming he was right. He swallowed, his throat dry, his mind racing. That thing he saw sinking, it was not just debris or wreckage. It was huge, shaped like a ship but unlike anything human hands had ever built. It was sleeping down there, waiting. He felt his stomach twist. Was the creature guarding it? Hiding it? Or had it brought it here for some darker reason? His thoughts spun until another sound broke the silence, low, distant rumbling. He froze, ears straining. Outside, far away but growing nearer, the thrum of engines rolled across the night. He went to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peer into the darkness. Faint lights flickered in the sky, moving slowly over the treetops. Not helicopters this time. These moved in patterns too strange, too silent, glowing with pale white beams that swept across the forest floor. His chest tightened. He did not know who they were, but he knew they were searching. And he knew what they were looking for. He turned back to the creature, his hands trembling. It was sitting up now, weak but determined, its glowing veins brighter, its chest heaving. It lifted its arm again, and once more he felt a sharp flash in his mind. This time it was not a vision of war but of the river itself. He saw the water open, saw the massive shadow beneath, felt the deep hum of something alive but sleeping under the surface. The creature's image lingered longer this time, showing him the exact spot, showing him the truth. The ship was real, and it was right outside, just below the current. He gasped and stumbled back, shaking his head. No, no, it can't be real. But the creature's eyes held him in place, unblinking, shimmering with a kind of desperate plea. His voice broke in a whisper. "You've been hiding it here, haven't you? That's why you were in the river. That's why you cried out." The creature's glowing hand pressed against its own chest, over the symbol, and its eyes closed slowly as though confirming his words. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the growing rumble of engines above. The man dragged his hands over his face, panic knotting in his gut. If there truly was something under the river, something alien, something alive, then he was caught in the middle of something far larger than he could control. His cabin felt smaller now, the shadows darker, the air heavier, as though the walls themselves knew what secret sat inside. The creature shivered, curling slightly, its glowing veins dimming as if the effort of showing him those memories had drained its strength. He wanted to ask 100 questions. Who were the ones searching in the sky? What war had it fought? Why bring the ship here? But the answers lay only in the fragments of visions it shared, and those fragments painted a picture far more terrifying than silence. His mind returned to the image of fire in the sky, the crash of metal, the endless voices screaming. He could not shake the sound, could not escape the feeling that it had not been only memory, it had been warning. He clenched his fists, looking again toward the window where the faint lights still swept over the trees. The searchers were coming closer, and when they reached the river, when they found what slept beneath, the whole world might learn what he had seen. He turned back toward the creature, his jaw set, his fear turning to cold understanding. "They're not just looking for you," he whispered. "They're looking for what you're hiding." The creature's eyes opened again, silver light burning, and for the first time, he thought he saw something more than fear in them. He thought he saw sorrow. The night pressed heavy on the cabin, and the man felt every second pass like the ticking of a clock too loud in his chest. The silver-eyed creature lay weakly on the blanket, but its gaze never left him. Outside, the low hum of engines had grown louder, and every sweep of light across the treetops made the wooden walls glow faintly before darkness swallowed them again. He could no longer pretend this was just a strange accident. Something far greater was happening, and he had stepped into the middle of it the moment he pulled that fragile body from the river. His hands trembled as he poured water into a cup and tried to offer it to the creature. It did not drink. Instead, it lifted one trembling hand and touched the floorboards beneath it. The air shifted again, and once more his vision was not his own. He saw the river as though he were floating above it, the moonlight reflecting across black water. Then the image sank lower, slipping beneath the surface, and his breath caught. Down there, hidden in the dark current, lay a shape so massive it filled the depths. The ship was not broken like wreckage, it was whole, intact, its surface glowing faintly with the same blue veins that ran under the creature's skin. He could feel it hum in the vision, a low vibration that rattled his bones though he stood only in memory. It was not dead. It was sleeping. The vision ended, and he was back in his cabin, gasping, hands clenched against his knees. The creature stared at him as if waiting for him to understand. His voice shook when he spoke. "It's a ship. You were hiding a ship." The creature's silver eyes blinked slowly, the glowing veins in its chest pulsing brighter in confirmation. He staggered back toward the window, staring at the black river he could barely see through the trees. A ship, buried right there under the water, silent all this time. His mind swirled with questions. How long had it been there? How had no one else noticed? And why was it sleeping instead of flying? A part of him wanted to believe it was just an illusion, some trick of the creature's mind, but deep down he knew it was truth. He had felt its power, deep and waiting. He turned back, ready to ask something else, when the creature suddenly tensed. Its head tilted upward, its chest glowing faster. Then he heard it too, voices, distant but approaching, mixed with the heavy crunch of boots on earth. His blood froze. Whoever had been searching from the sky was now on foot, coming closer to the river, closer to the cabin. He rushed to the fire and stamped it out, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the faint glow from the creature's veins lit the space now, eerie and fragile. "Quiet," he whispered, though he doubted the creature understood words. Still, it curled tighter against the blanket, dimming its glow as best it could. The man crouched by the window, peering through a crack in the curtain. At first, he saw nothing but shadows moving between trees. Then came the faint red dots of scopes sweeping across the ground. Not soldiers, not police. These men carried themselves differently, silent, fast, too precise. Mercenaries. His stomach twisted. They weren't here for him, they were here for the ship, for the thing beneath the water. One of the beams of light cut across the riverbank, and for a split second he thought he saw the faint glow of blue rising through the surface as though the ship was responding to their presence. He turned back toward the creature, whispering in a sharp breath, "They know. They're here for it." The creature's eyes flashed brighter, its body trembling, and then another surge hit his mind. This time it was not just images. It was feeling, desperation, fear, a plea for help so strong it almost knocked him backward. He saw flashes of the ship's core, glowing like a heart, and the sense of something powerful inside it, something not meant for human hands. Then the vision snapped off, leaving him with the weight of understanding pressing on his chest. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It carried something more, something dangerous, something that could change everything if those mercenaries reached it. The man pressed a hand to his forehead, heart racing. He had wanted nothing more than a quiet night, a quiet life, but fate had dragged him into this. Now he was the only thing standing between this fragile creature and the hunters closing in. A noise cracked outside, the snap of a branch under a heavy boot. He ducked lower, pulling a drawer open and retrieving the old revolver he hadn't touched in years. His hand shook as he loaded it, but he forced himself still. He could not fight them all, but maybe he could buy time. Another sound came, closer now, and through the crack in the curtain he saw one of the mercenaries appear. His face was covered by a dark mask, his rifle aimed low, scanning the trees. Behind him, two more shapes followed, their boots silent but their eyes sharp, scanning every shadow. The man swallowed hard, feeling the creature's gaze burning into him from behind. He turned slightly, whispering without looking back, "You have to stay quiet. You have to stay hidden." The creature gave no reply, but its glow dimmed again, as if it understood. He returned to the window. The mercenaries had moved closer to the river now, their lights shining across the surface. And then it happened. The river began to stir. The glowing ripples appeared again, spreading wider this time, pulsing stronger. The men stopped, their beams locking on the water. They spoke in low voices he couldn't hear, and then one raised a scanner device, holding it out toward the current. The machine lit up instantly, a sharp green glow that made the man's stomach drop. They had found it. The river churned louder, the glow beneath the surface growing brighter, and then the ground itself trembled. He staggered back from the window, his breath caught in his throat, his revolver clutched tight. Behind him, the creature sat upright now, its silver eyes wide, its body shaking as if it could feel the ship's awakening. Outside, the mercenaries shouted and raised their weapons, lights flickering across the water. And in that moment, he saw it, just for an instant, rising beneath the surface, the massive metallic outline of something alive. The earth shook beneath his boots, a slow deep vibration that rattled the windows of the cabin and sent dust falling from the beams overhead. The man's heart hammered as he stumbled back from the window, his revolver clutched tight in his hand. Outside, the mercenaries were shouting now, their calm, silent approach shattered by the sudden roar of the river as it began to churn and glow. The light spilling up from beneath the surface was no longer faint, it burned bright, blue, and white, illuminating the trees and the armed men like a second moon rising from the depths. The river boiled, sending waves crashing against the banks, and the sound was deafening. He could see the men clearly now, their dark masks lit by the glow as they aimed their rifles at the water, shouting into radios, their voices sharp with panic. The scanner one of them held beeped wildly, lights flashing so fast it looked like it was going to burst. Then the first shadow broke the surface. The man froze, his breath caught. Metal, massive and dark, rose slowly from the river's heart. Water poured off it in sheets, crashing down like waterfalls. For a moment it seemed endless, climbing higher and higher, as if some drowned building was rising from a grave. The mercenaries fired, their rifles flashing in the night, bullets spraying across the surface of the thing that emerged. Sparks flew where the round struck, but the metal beneath did not break. It shone with the same blue glow that pulsed through the creature's veins. The man staggered back, revolver useless in his hand. His cabin felt like nothing more than a paper shelter now, fragile and weak against the power rising outside. Behind him, the creature cried out, a sound sharper, stronger than before. Its body glowed brighter, the symbol on its chest blazing, and he turned in shock. It was standing now, though unsteady, its silver eyes locked on the window, its thin body trembling like it was fighting something deep inside itself. The glow from its veins matched the glow from the river, as though they were bound together. The man's mouth went dry. He realized then that the creature was not only hiding the ship, it was connected to it. Maybe it had awakened it. Maybe it was the only thing keeping it alive. Another boom shook the earth as more of the colossal ship broke the surface. Its shape became clearer now, angular and alien, its hull covered with strange patterns that pulsed with light. Towers of metal rose like spines, water cascading off their edges. The mercenaries spread out, some retreating to the trees, others holding their ground, firing desperately. A new sound split the night, the roar of engines above. The man looked up to see aircraft streaking low, their searchlights cutting across the river, circling the ship. He could not tell if they were military or mercenary, but their intent was the same. They had come to claim it. He turned back toward the creature, his voice sharp with urgency. They know about it. They'll take it if you don't stop them. What are you hiding down there? What's inside that ship? The creature met his eyes, and once again the world spun as another vision tore through him. He saw the ship's core, glowing like a sun in darkness, vast energy swirling inside it. He saw planets burning, weapons firing beams of light that shattered entire fleets. He saw destruction spread across skies, endless war fought with ships just like this one. His chest tightened, breath gone. The vision ended, leaving him trembling. He finally understood. The ship was not just a vessel. It was a weapon. The creature had not been hiding it just to survive, it had been guarding it, keeping it out of the hands of anyone who would use it again. He looked at the silver-eyed being, his voice low, filled with fear. That's why they're here. They want the weapon. The creature gave a faint nod, its glow flickering like a dying flame. Another explosion ripped through the night, snapping his head back toward the river. Rockets from the aircraft streaked into the ship, detonating against its surface in blinding fireballs. The ground shook so hard his cabin walls cracked, and he thought the whole building might collapse. But when the smoke cleared, the ship was still standing, the glow of its hull burning brighter, stronger, as if their attacks had only woken it further. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating in his bones, and lights began to flicker across the length of the ship like veins carrying blood to a heart. It was alive, answering the call. The man turned to the creature again, desperate. If it wakes all the way, what happens? What will it do? The creature's silver eyes shimmered with sorrow, and for the first time, the man thought he saw it hesitate, as if even it did not know whether the awakening was salvation or doom. Another crash outside drew his attention. The mercenaries had brought heavier weapons now, strange launchers that fired bursts of energy instead of bullets. They struck the ship with bright flashes, shaking the earth again. The man's revolver felt like a toy in his hand, useless against the tide of destruction unfolding just outside his home. He dropped it, stepping closer to the creature, his voice breaking. Tell me what to do. If they get that ship, everything changes. But if you lose control of it, everything changes anyway. The creature's chest glowed brighter than ever, veins blazing, the symbol on its skin shining like fire. It staggered toward the door, one hand braced against the frame, its body trembling as though torn between weakness and purpose. The man reached out, ready to steady it, but before he could, a flash of blinding light filled the night. He turned, eyes wide, as the ship finally broke fully free of the river, towering above the trees, its hull dripping water like a rising titan. The hum became a roar, and for the first time, the man felt not just fear but awe. This was no wreck. This was power, alive and waiting, a beast of metal and light that had slept too long. Behind him, the creature gave one last cry, voice filled with pain and strength both, and the symbol on its chest flared like a star. The man's heart froze. He understood then, the ship was no longer simply waking. It was answering. And it was answering to the call of the being he had pulled from the water. The roar of the awakening ship thundered across the night, a sound so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. Trees shook as though in a storm, birds burst into the sky in wild flocks, and the river boiled around the metallic giant now standing half above the water. The man stumbled out of his cabin, shielding his eyes from the glow that poured off the vessel like a rising sun. It was taller than any building he had ever seen, its hull covered in alien patterns that pulsed like living veins. Every pulse echoed in his chest, rattling his bones, filling him with a fear so sharp it felt like awe. The mercenaries at the riverbank were no longer shouting, they were screaming. Some fired wildly at the ship, their weapons flashing in desperate bursts, while others retreated into the forest, their courage broken by the sight of the towering beast of metal and light. The aircraft above circled, their engines roaring, but none dared to descend too close. The ship was alive now, and even they seemed to fear what might happen if they challenged it further. Behind him, the man heard the creature's footsteps, weak but steady. He turned to see it standing in the doorway of the cabin, its silver eyes burning brighter than ever. Its chest glowed like fire, the symbol blazing, each pulse in perfect rhythm with the lights running across the ship. He realized then what he had feared: it was not just connected to the ship. It was controlling it. Or perhaps the ship was controlling both of them. His throat tightened. "What are you doing?" he shouted over the deafening hum. The creature raised one trembling hand toward the ship, and instantly the massive vessel responded. A low beam of light swept across the river, so bright it lit the entire forest in stark silver. The mercenaries dove for cover, their shadows stark against the trees. The man's chest clenched. He remembered the visions, the planets burning, the fleets shattered, the endless war fought with ships like this. This vessel was not just a relic. It was a weapon of unimaginable power. And now it was awake. The creature turned its glowing eyes to him, sorrow shimmering in their depths. For a brief moment, its voice brushed across his mind again, not in words but in feeling, loneliness, loss, and a warning. He gasped, understanding. This being was the last of its kind, the guardian of this ship. It had hidden the weapon, buried it under water, not because it wished to use it but because it wished to keep it from anyone else. And now, by saving it, by pulling it out of the river, he had broken that fragile balance. Above, one of the aircraft dove too close, releasing a rocket that streaked toward the rising ship. The blast struck its hull in a blinding flash, shaking the ground. For a heartbeat, the night was nothing but fire and thunder. Then the ship responded. A beam of energy erupted from its side, silent and blinding, cutting through the sky like a blade. The aircraft vanished in an explosion of light, pieces falling in burning arcs toward the forest. The man stumbled back, horror twisting in his chest. He shouted at the creature, his voice raw. "Stop! You'll kill them all. You'll kill us too." But the creature only trembled, its silver eyes glistening. It was not in control, it was struggling against the power now flowing through it. The ship's hum grew louder, sharper, vibrating so fiercely he thought his teeth would shatter. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head as the sound filled every corner of his mind. The visions returned, fleets burning, cities falling, screams that shook the stars. His body shook as though the ship itself were pouring its memories into him, showing him what it had been built to do. It had been a titan of war, a destroyer that once crossed galaxies leaving nothing alive in its path. And now it was waking in his world. The creature staggered, falling to its knees, its glow flaring so bright it was painful to look at. The man crawled toward it, gripping its thin shoulders, shouting to be heard over the thunder of the ship. "You don't have to let it happen again. If you control it, stop it. If it controls you, fight it." For a moment, he thought it was hopeless. Then the creature looked at him, and he felt its mind press into his one last time. He saw its memories, not of war this time, but of silence, years spent alone, buried beneath the river, hiding from hunters, guarding the weapon it both hated and loved. He felt its sorrow, its endless watch, its desperate hope that no one would ever find it. And now he felt its choice. The glow on its chest flared brighter than ever, the symbol burning like a star about to die. The ship roared, rising higher, water crashing down in torrents. Lights raced across its hull like fire running through veins, converging at its core. The man realized with horror what was happening. The creature was not going to unleash the weapon. It was going to bury it forever. He shook his head, tears burning his eyes. "No, you'll die with it." But the creature only gave him one last look, eyes full of sorrow and peace both. Then it pressed its glowing hand against his chest. Warmth surged through him, flooding his body, and in his mind he heard one final whisper, soft as a sigh, "Live." The world erupted in white. A blast of light consumed the river, the ship, the forest, the mercenaries, the aircraft, everything vanished in brilliance so pure it blinded him. The roar of the Titan was gone, replaced by silence so deep it seemed eternal. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying alone on the riverbank. The water flowed calm and dark, as if nothing had ever broken its surface. The cabin behind him stood untouched, the trees swaying gently in the night breeze. But the creature was gone. The ship was gone. Only the quiet river remained, carrying secrets back into its depths. He sat there, shaking, his breath uneven, staring into the dark current. The symbol still burned faintly on his chest where its hand had touched him, a mark that would never fade. He knew then that he would never be the same. He had seen the truth. He had touched the edge of war, held in his arms the last of a dying kind, and watched a titan return to sleep. And though the river now looked calm, he knew its secret was not gone, it was only waiting, hidden once more, until the day it might be awakened again.